Big breaking news today. Well, a
Well,
couple
it'll be a
days ago
couple
for
days.
everybody else. For us, it worked out. This is very is serendipitous the word?
Timely.
Timely. We normally record this a day, maybe sometimes 2 days before the release date of the podcast. And due to one of us not being prepared, we had to push this for a couple hours on the day that we record. And during that time, big news happened.
Yeah,
So it was very fortunate that we couldn't record
it
when
was
we were
delayed a little
supposed
bit.
to. Yes. I'm Phil Royle. I'm one of the co-hosts here on the What Car podcast and one of the co-founders at whatcar.com. I've been doing automotive content creation and no, that's you, content creation and moderation, isn't it? That's you. What am
Yeah,
I? I'm an automotive
stealing my
journalist and
thunder.
content creator for 20 something years and selling t-shirts at the whatcar.com/store that help support the blog and the podcast. Now you can say what I just said.
Ed Sanchez, likewise 20 plus years in automotive content creation and moderation. Day job, automotive electronics industry analyst, and the Watt Car co-founder and contributor.
So if you would have asked Peter Rawlinson yesterday to give his introduction, he would have said, CEO of Lucid Motors. What does
Yes.
he say now?
Evidently strategic technical advisor to the chairman of the board.
Fired is what he says.
Uh, yeah, this
How
was
did
kind
you
of
read this?
unexpected.
Did you read it that way? I read it as fired.
Uh,
Did you read it as fired? Now that we have successfully launched the
yeah,
Lucid Gravity, I have decided it is finally the right time for me to step aside from my roles at Lucid, said Rawlinson. I am incredibly proud of the accomplishments the Lucid team has achieved together through my tenure of these past 12 years. He's 68 years old, so he's not young,
yeah,
but he's just at the company as it's beginning its ascent. It
yeah,
has
into mainstream, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, it has had a high end limited production sedan as its only vehicle.
Until
And
recently. Yeah.
until now, with the Gravity, that's potentially, I mean, they've done first drives, but I don't think a
Hmm.
single one of a production vehicle is on the road yet of their big SUV. But he's right where that would be the thing that takes the company off. If it's going to take
Hmm.
off
Hmm.
between these two vehicles, the Gravity is the vehicle that
Hmm.
makes it take off. The Air was the proof of concept. I think in reality, Gravity Junior,
Hmm.
microgravity, is the thing that would send Lucid. That would be their Model Y. Would be a
Yeah.
microgravity.
And they've kind of alluded to that uh not that long ago that
So why would he
they
quit?
say it's
He
hard to know
didn't.
exactly why.
He
Well,
didn't. That's why. He's decided to spend more time with his family.
well, I
Isn't
mean,
that the
like you
line of
said, I
all
mean,
CEOs?
yeah, I mean, like you said, 68 years old. You know, that's depending on your perspective, that's past retirement age for a lot of people. Um,
And 12 years as a CEO
yeah,
of Lucid, apparently.
that's quite a while.
The average lifespan of
Yeah,
a CEO in America is something like 3 to 5 years.
yeah. So he's outlived that by quite a bit. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know the kind of the backroom boardroom conversations that happen here. Um, I'm sure he's been under pressure to deliver, maybe if not deliver profits, to decrease losses, so to speak. So, I think there probably was pressure from that standpoint. I think obviously prioritizing the Gravity, getting that launched, that was a big step in, you know, improving their financial picture and all that. And I think the company's potentially poised to go a little more mass market with what you call the Gravity Junior, or
Microgravity.
Gravity
That's what we'll just call
Microgravity, yeah. uh, which will obviously be their higher volume model, which, you know, conceivably would be like a Model Y competitor, or Rivian R2 or whatever. Um, and I think, I mean, there's no disputing. I think Rawlinson's a very brilliant engineering mind, and also has a very good team with him too, but he never struck me as like a numbers like operations guy. You know what I mean?
He was an
He always
engineer
struck me
at
as,
Tesla, wasn't
yeah,
he? He
at
was,
Tesla, yeah.
yeah.
So I think he was very passionate about engineering and engineering excellence and just engineering details, but in terms of the financial stuff, I don't know if that was necessarily his forte or his primary interest. So I think probably my guess is whoever they're bringing in will be more of a numbers operations kind of guy, to conceivably get him to the next level where they could really ramp up production of the microgravity, or as you say it, and really help them kind of scale up and become more than just a real niche specialized brand. So
The COO is going to take over for a while. And I was looking in the announcement and I can't
mhm,
find it, but there was a statement from the board, I believe, that said we're going to start looking at
mhm.
the who's next.
A permanent replacement, yeah.
And it was all of those things. It was like they're not prepared. He's stepping
Hmm,
down.
hmm,
They're not prepared. He got fired. And my opinion, and also my opinion, is that this could be, you know how I've mentioned before the Saudi sovereign wealth fund that is
hmm,
massive
hmm.
investors in Lucid, and how they had to put another $1 billion commitment or something into the company
Hmm,
not long
hmm,
ago. I don't remember what the exact number was, but it was a big number that they committed.
hmm,
And I said, that's it's dangerous. You're playing with dangerous people at that
hmm.
point. There's a lot on the line when dealing with that wealth fund.
Yeah.
And
And
I
if they
would
pull their
want to
money,
be,
you're pretty much done.
yeah, I would not want to be beholden to them to the extent that he was,
Hmm,
and then not be delivering on your promises, which he
hmm,
wasn't because they
hmm,
couldn't scale up to the production of the vehicle. They couldn't make it profitable. How much were they
hmm,
losing? Was it 60,000, 120,000 per car, something astronomical number? Like
hmm,
they
hmm,
could get there to profitability, but man, it was a long road, especially when you were
hmm,
dealing with a
hmm,
sedan,
hmm,
a high-end sedan that
hmm,
now, when it launched, it was fine. But
hmm,
now you've got like the EQS.
hmm.
I think people, if you're going to spend similar money, why not buy a Mercedes? And you've got a network that can service the thing. It's a car that you know. I
Yeah.
mean,
No,
it's a
no, I
clientele.
get it. I mean, I
It's
still
rough.
feel
It's a rough road.
from a technical and engineering standpoint, I think the Air is a much more sophisticated vehicle from a technical and engineering standpoint than the EQS. But again, when you're talking about luxury cars, who cares?
Yeah,
It's all about the
you're
status.
you're having it for
You
three
know?
to 5 years.
Yeah.
You're driving it. You don't care about the efficiency. You don't care about
Yeah.
anything. You're buying the badge on the front. You're buying the status that
Hmm,
comes with it.
hmm,
I think when you said that Rawlinson was basically an engineering marvel, he came in and did all
hmm,
this
hmm,
engineering. So he did. You look at the motor, you look at the inverter, you look
hmm,
at its
hmm.
packaging, you look at the efficiency of the vehicle. The Air should not exist the way it exists. He has led a team that has done magic,
Yeah. It's effectively, I would consider the Lucid Air effectively state of the art
but
in terms of EVs. Yeah.
not profitable.
Yeah.
And I
So
think when your
there is
investors
that.
are having to commit hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion, over the course of the next 5 years, whatever. I wish I could remember. If I were better,
Yeah.
I would have researched this. But uh, I think he ended up in a very difficult place, and they let him ramp up with the gravity and say, okay,
Hmm,
now you're on Lucid's on a good path,
hmm.
and we can kind of
Take it from here.
yeah,
Yeah.
we don't need your direction at this point. The engineering push has been done. What we
Hmm.
need now is exactly what you said. We need financial
A
excellence.
numbers and operations guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
who's
So
next? Who steps in? Is this after Elon gets kicked out of Tesla? Does he step in to Lucid? Is this where we're going?
uh
Because we know he's good at numbers.
well, we'll see. He thinks he is with Doge, but anyway. So blast from the past. I mean, this guy popped into my mind. I don't know if it'll ultimately be him or not, but what do we think about Herbert Dees?
He is the guy we love to throw in as the as the savior of everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because he gets EVs. He
Hmm,
obviously gets EVs and he wasn't afraid to speak his mind.
hmm,
And what I liked about him was I don't know him on any kind of level, never met
hmm,
the guy.
hmm,
I just know what I've read about him. He seemed like a decent human being.
Hmm.
He treated people like Rawlinson I liked because
Hmm.
he wouldn't badmouth people. He
Hmm.
wouldn't, he'd make little comments, whatever,
Hmm.
as you would do, but
He
you
doesn't
wouldn't,
send mean tweets.
yeah. It's like he was a
Yeah.
reasonable CEO. And
Hmm.
Herbert Deese came across that way as well. And Herbert Deese and Jim Farley are
Hmm.
like two peas in a pod, really, when it comes to how they interact,
Hmm.
or in
Hmm.
Deese's case, interacted when he was at Volkswagen
Hmm.
with their own department and the public, and
Hmm.
calling out things that aren't working and calling
Hmm.
out things that are working. And they were
Hmm.
very honest with it. And I really like the Jim Farley, Herbert Deese kind of approach to the whole thing.
Hmm.
I don't like the we're better than everybody else approach. It's also why
Hmm.
I like RJ Scarin.
Hmm. Hmm.
He's like that.
Rivian, yeah.
There's a lot of them that are
Hmm.
like that, and there's some that aren't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Herbert Deese, sure, why
Yeah.
not? He's off doing something else with a Chinese company now or something,
Oh,
isn't
is he?
he? But
Oh,
yeah, he's got some other job. But
yeah. We'll
I'm sure he
see.
could be convinced. I mean, like we started this off with, the lifespan of as a CEO of a company like this
Yeah.
is 3 to 5 years. So you're always 1 foot out the door, I would imagine. There's a joke about it. I won't go into it. The
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
envelopes in the CEO.
So my hunch is whoever it is going to have some level of expertise with the premium brand. Um, so before Volkswagen, these came from BMW, remember? Um, and then, VW Group encompasses Porsche and Audi and all that. So I would guess whoever comes in will have had some level of experience with a global premium brand. But again, just speculation. I don't know. Could be totally out of left field and maybe possibly even outside of the automotive industry. I mean, who knows? So,
Yeah, I have no idea.
so
But I'll be interested to see because it's a make or break time for them.
yeah, yeah.
It's more make or break for them than it is for Rivian, but Rivian's also in a make or break. Lucid, I think, could break. They're more toward the
Hmm.
break than the make. Rivian's more toward the make than the break, but they're
Yeah,
both in that kind of
yeah.
situation. So I think who they make a
I
decision
want Lucid to
now.
succeed one way or the other because I just think from a technical and engineering standpoint, I feel at least for most, again, I'm not intimately familiar about what's going on in China, but in terms of the other global EV makers, I consider Lucid as kind of setting the bar for technical excellence. So from that standpoint, I want them to succeed.
I think
So
their technology will succeed.
yeah.
Regardless of what happens to the company, I think the technology will be purchased and it will be incorporated into, as it is with an Aston
Hmm.
Martin. I think
Hmm.
you could end
Hmm.
up with Aston Martin or BMW or Mercedes or somebody just outright purchasing the
Kind of
IP.
similar to like a Rimac Bugatti
Yeah,
sort of deal or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It could be, powered by Lucid. It could be, it could
Hmm.
be AMG could basically buy something like the Lucid tech, and then
Hmm.
AMG is because they used to dump big motors in and get big power
Hmm.
out of the Mercedes, and
Well,
now they can't
didn't
really
some of
do that
the
anymore.
ICE model Aston Martins have AMG engines? I think.
They could
Yeah.
have. I'm not sure,
Yeah, the
but AMG used to
DBX I think had an AMG engine. Yeah.
AMG used to tune and get big power,
Hmm.
and now they can't. Now they're a
Yeah.
trim. They're, fancier leather. So now imagine if they could take Lucid tech and put it
Hmm.
in an EQ Mercedes, and you'd
Hmm.
have a true like AMG hopped up car. I could see something like that
Hmm.
happening. I
Yeah.
think its technology will survive no matter what. If the company doesn't, I want the company to survive. I wonder if Stellantis will survive.
Good question. I think Stellantis would like Stellantis to survive.
I saw a chart not long ago that showed sales like year
Mhm,
over year, and Stellantis
mhm.
was like
I think,
a big
"Oh."
arrow pointing down. It was not good.
Well,
But
maybe
they've
they're
got
hoping the Ramcharger will reverse their fortunes.
it looks promising. I think. I mean, I
Yeah.
both of us I think are in agreement. EV
Hmm.
trucks, if you're into just cruising around, throw a surfboard in the back, which I am, that's
Yeah.
great. If you're into using it as an actual truck and hauling and towing, which I'm also into, not
Not the
so
best
good.
for that. Yeah.
For that, you need a range extended model, having all the torque of an EV. What you want is all the torque of an EV and all the versatility of an internal combustion engine. Enter the Ramcharger.
Yes.
So
So
what
I
about
guess
it?
I guess they had an event which we were not invited to. We're not big enough influencers, I guess. I don't know. Um,
I don't have the time. I don't know about you, but I don't have the time. I will gladly be a
Yeah, this
armchair
is a side
quarterback of
hustle for
this.
both of us, so that could be a challenge. Anyway, so we have, I guess, the production intent specs. Combined output of 647 horsepower and 610 pound-feet, which I guess is a little bit down from the initial figures they threw out, for whatever reason.
It's
Um,
no 1,000 pound-feet, but this is a half-ton truck.
yeah, with 8 lug wheels though. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's beside the point. So a weight, this didn't, after the Hummer and the Silverado EV, this doesn't really shock me anymore. Um, it's 7,507 pound curb weight. Um,
I don't know
that's
all three-quarter ton trucks, but I know the Chevy Silverado
mhm,
2500 or 3500, whatever it was I tested a few years ago, was like 8,200 with the big
mhm,
diesel. So
mhm.
it's not crazy, but that was a three-quarter ton.
Yeah. So anyway, heavy, but not insanely heavy. I mean, in comparison to some other arguably comparable models. Anyway, optional rear e-locker, which for some truck guys is a big deal. 14,000 pound towing capacity, which is, I'd say, a little bit beyond your typical half ton. Um,
I would say that's
20,
definitely
mhm,
respectable. That's going to tow
yeah,
anything that any
reasonable.
reasonable person is going to want to
Yeah,
tow with that. And anything over that, you're definitely in three-quarter ton, 1 ton range.
yeah. 2,625 pound payload, also pretty competitive. Um, so this is interesting, and we'll get to this in a second. 91.8 kilowatt hour gross capacity NMC battery, only about 70 kilowatt hour usable. And they had a specific reason for doing that, because at first I was like, wow, they're giving up a lot of, or they're only using a relatively small percentage of the overall capacity, but they had a reason for doing that. I guess initially it's going to ship with a CCS port, which in this day
Interesting.
and age is maybe not what
It's a
the
bold
direction
move,
the industry is
Cotton.
going. Well, but I kind of get it, because as of right now, that's still the predominant, outside of the supercharger network, still the predominant plug type. Now, in the next few years, that will change, but I mean, or this
It's
could be a
actually
matter.
it's
Go ahead.
possibly a smart move
Uh-huh.
because at least in California, superchargers generally have a lot of vehicles at them.
Mhm.
And CCS chargers that I see, there are one or two here or there, and nobody's at them.
Mhm.
So if you're
Yeah.
going to pull up a truck with a trailer, you're probably going to make fewer enemies charging at a CCS station when you
Yeah.
block everything than you would pulling into a supercharger. A block, like I'd be blocking 50
Yeah.
feet of chargers
Yeah.
unless I
I mean,
disconnected.
either way, you can work around this with an adapter. I don't know if it's going to be one of those deals where they just throw one in, or anyway, but you could make a case either way for that. So as we've previously reported, the range extender is a 3.6 liter Pentastar V6. For this application, it's kind of detuned a little bit from its use as like a regular propulsion engine. So it's
To
tuned for,
clarify, this only powers the battery.
it's only a generator. It is not connected to the wheels at all.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's tuned to 271 horsepower and 226 pound-feet. But I think it's basically one of those constant, like, it'll rev at like a steady state, like 2,500 or 3,000 RPM. And then maybe under high load conditions, it'd kick up to like maybe 4,500 or 5,000. But it's a different application than it would be in a regular internal combustion truck. So anyway,
Yeah,
is
so
what
it's
it
really
is.
hard to say what horsepower and torque they need. It needs however much they need to generate the electricity that,
Exactly.
that you would then
So
use.
anyway, they kind of settle on that. So um, not the most efficient in range extender mode. They're saying it'll get right around 20 miles per gallon. Um, so you know, a little bit less than, I mean, you had what, about a year ago, you drove that F-150 Power Boost,
Mm-hmm.
and you said you averaged like 24, 25 or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so a little less than that, but I mean, I think the idea is around town, you'd plug it in, drive it predominantly on electricity, and save the range extender for road trips or towing or hauling. So potentially, depending on how much you plug it in, you could get a much higher effective MPGE. But
Yeah,
anyway,
for my use around town, day to day, I would not use any gas
hmm
because I would be plugging it in. It's only when I was towing would I
hmm
then be would the engine be clicking
hmm
on if I understand how this works correctly.
yeah,
So I don't think 20 miles per gallon isn't great,
it's not
but
horrible.
it's not horrible when you consider the time that you would be using it would be extended road trips or towing
hmm
or
hmm
hauling or whatever. For the vast majority of time, you wouldn't be using it. So that average would actually be significantly higher than that.
hmm
It would be, I don't know,
Well, I think
create
the
a
big
number,
question is
50 miles per
what
gallon.
would the consumption be in when you're towing? I mean, so if it
Who cares when you're towing? As
well,
long
I
as it
know,
gets you
but I
there.
mean, even let's say even if it gets like 14 or 15 miles per gallon towing, that's still pretty
That'd
good.
be great. Man,
Um,
I'd love that. If I
yeah,
could get 14
yeah. I
miles per
mean,
gallon towing.
for a half ton or even like a gas 3/4 ton. Now, I have heard of stories of the 3/4 ton diesels approaching that even while towing. I've heard of some guys getting 12, 13 towing with the diesel. So
I think I was getting at least
anyway,
that with that
Duramax.
Silverado. Yeah.
Yeah.
It got surprisingly good fuel economy.
Yeah. So anyway, they haven't announced pricing. Kind of the spitball figure people are throwing out is between 60 to 100, depending on the trim. So that'd be roughly in line with the higher end ICE Ram models. So anyway,
So,
um,
okay, 27-gallon fuel
yeah.
tank
hmm
and 145 miles of electric range. But wouldn't that be more if they, and then you say 545 miles of additional driving, so total range is 690 miles. But what, so go back to the battery. Why are they using a
hmm
small percentage of the battery?
Because they want to maintain that power level like at all times. So I guess having that battery buffer allows it to deliver maximum power even at a relatively low state of charge. Whereas if they went kind of deeper into the battery capacity, it would reduce the amount of available power, is kind of how I heard it explained. So,
Yeah, I think there's also something with charging. There's tricks that you can do because you use that
hmm
overhead and
hmm
if you never can drop below the 10%, then you can always charge at a higher rate. And there's all these
yeah.
different tricks that they can do. Honestly, I'd prefer to have the range.
hmm
Like, can't you with your Tesla, can't you say, um, was it which car? Like you can, yours only by default, yours only charges to like 85% or something like that. And don't you manually have to change it if you wanted to
Well,
go to
I mean, it's
100?
it's recommended for battery health at 80%. I mean, I can override it and
Yeah, but by
put it
default,
90,
it
100. Yeah.
by default it takes like 20% off the top, I thought, even when you're home charging, doesn't it?
I mean, it'll like auto reset, but you can easily override that.
Yeah.
But
So it's always
yeah.
trying to drop 20% off of the thing.
hmm
And
hmm
you've got to override it. I would
hmm
prefer to have that kind of setup where I can override it and have access to the battery. But I mean,
they might have done that deliberately to prolong battery life. I mean, it's
yeah.
my
And I
guess.
would say, well, they could just update it later with software OTA updates. But a lot of these manufacturers don't seem to be too quick.
There's only one company that does it well, and it's not very popular right now.
Remember when
So,
we thought everybody like OTA was the thing, and then it just kind of went, nobody
well,
nobody did it.
I think a lot of people are finding out it's harder to do than it is to talk about. So anyway, so another range extended model that's gotten a little press
Are
lately.
we gonna have to change the name of the blog and the podcast to the Range Extended Podcast?
Actually, that's not bad. I kind of like the I kind of like the ring of that. Anyway, so the Scout, which was unveiled to great fanfare and a lot of excitement in the off-roading community, I think. And I guess initial pre-orders or reservations are trending heavily toward the range extended model, as opposed to the pure battery electric. So,
Makes sense
um, yeah.
for that crowd. I can totally see that
hmm
they would go after something with a gasoline engine
hmm
as a backup because they're not quite ready to
Yeah.
go EV.
Yeah.
Totally see
Even though, I mean, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, well, what about like the Rubicon Trail? Okay. The entire Rubicon Trail, I think start to finish is like 20 miles, and you're going like 3 to 5 miles an hour for most of it. So, assuming you started the trailhead with full charge, would say you could most like I can't imagine a scenario where you wouldn't finish with plenty of charge. But anyway, as that aside, um, so Scott Keogh, who's the CEO of Scout, made a stop by Jay Leno's garage, and he took Jay out in I guess one of their developmental prototypes. So the usual banner and back and forth. So um, yeah, so we got a little more detail on the range extender. Um, so Keogh described it as a quote high output four cylinder. Um, Nothing more than that in terms of displacement, naturally aspirated, turbocharged, whatever. My guess is just looking at what's currently in the Volkswagen portfolio. So kind of their bread and butter engine and like the Golf, the Jetta is a 1.5 liter turbo four cylinder. So my guess now in this model they maintain the frunk, so it's not under the hood. So and I think he specifically says rear mounted. So my guess is they took that engine, just flopped it over on its side, and stuck it in the back somewhere. So just a guess, but anyway, this is clearly a developmental mule because you could hear extremely loud gear whine and like a clunk as he got on and off the throttle. So this is not like production ready, showroom ready model. This
That's
is,
interesting. Or it's
yeah,
been through a lot of abuse.
yeah, or that too. But so other details in this video are the pure battery electric will have a NMC, so nickel manganese. I can't even remember the C. Chromium? No, cobalt.
Cobalt. The
Nickel
bad one.
manganese cobalt.
The bad one that we shouldn't be using,
And the range extender is going to be LFP.
which is the
So,
ones we should be using. Just
according,
saying.
yeah,
Like, if
yeah,
you watch some of the things of the cobalt mines, like, it's horrific. Like,
yeah.
it should be
I,
banned. It should be
I
up
would
there
hope
with,
most
like,
ethical companies are you know, vetting their sourcing their suppliers for that. But anyway, who knows?
it looks brutal. Like, I'm LFP all in at this point. I'm
Yeah.
performance guy, but I think at some point you give up a little bit of performance to get something that is more ethically sourced
Yeah.
than than this.
So anyway, that's a side. I guess the full electric one is going to be slightly quicker. They're quoting 3.50 to 60 for the battery model and 4.5 for the range extended.
Both are plenty
Again,
fast.
still plenty quick. Yeah. Um,
You'll get into trouble with either of those.
yeah. So anyway, that's coming, I think it's 2027 model, so probably mid to late 26, but looks cool. Um, Solid rear axle, which has the
Nice. Yeah.
off-road guys excited. So anyway, so a few more tidbits on that. So uh, if you haven't noticed, the predominant narrative is depending on where you get your news sources. EVs suck. They can't go very far. Blah blah blah. Anyway, and of course, Elon's doing his own thing, which
Who knows what that means?
alienated some people.
Hmm.
Um, so a lot of OEMs that were previously very bullish and all in on EVs have kind of backpedaled a little bit and are taking a little more of a powertrain agnostic approach. So among them is Mercedes, I guess.
They're going into mixed martial arts now. They've dropped cars completely, and it's all mixed martial arts for Mercedes.
Well,
Did I
that's
read the
called
press release wrong? Is that
the MMA platform. Yeah. So
pretty sure that they're going to mixed martial arts? Quite
anyway,
positive
yeah.
on this one.
So their strategy going forward is, I guess externally the vehicles are going to look very similar, but they'll be relatively powertrain agnostic. Uh, I think more so on the lower end, it's going to be either like a mild hybrid, possibly a plug-in, and then full electric. I guess on the higher end, like the E and the S classes, it's going to be either electrified or it sounded like plug-in hybrid was the strategy. But
I really don't know. I mean, there's got to be a way to do this, but I really don't know how you do this. It seems like what they're actually doing is designing they've got a body size, and then they're going to design different chassis that go underneath the existing
Yeah,
body.
yeah,
Because I really don't know how you
yeah.
have something that has batteries and then something that has a gas only engine and then something that has
Hmm.
batteries and a gas engine
Yeah.
in it and have the chassis the same unless you then go to like I don't know. I'm not an
Yeah.
engineer. I just look
You
at this
know,
thing and
again,
go,
I'm not an
this
engineer. It seems to me this is going to be kind of a compromised design, but I mean, maybe that's a salty cynic in me. But from everyone I've talked to and interviewed and all and research I've done, you really have to kind of optimize for one
yeah.
powertrain or another. You need to
Especially
you'd
if you
be
want to be
kind of all in on
efficient.
EVs or,
Yeah.
you know, optimize it for a combustion powertrain. If you try to kind of do both,
Now
it's not going to be ideal. But
now the flip side to that is if you want to potentially make more money, this is definitely the way to go.
well,
So you come
at
up with the
least in the
compromised,
midterm, yeah.
yeah, you come up with the compromised design, but you've got
But you
the
sell more of
the
them.
scale that
Yeah.
comes with it. So now it doesn't cost you as much to do everything. So I get it from that point of view. It's definitely not the most efficient
Hmm.
design as far as it's efficient as far as production, but it's not efficient as far as EVs that will go the furthest or ICE vehicles that will get the
Hmm.
most miles per
It's not
gallon. They're not going to be
optimized.
the
Yeah.
best. Yeah, you're not optimizing for the specific thing. So I guess I wonder if this is just a step back so then they can make money and then eventually they can step forward. Because eventually, if everything goes EV, which seems to be the way it's going,
Hmm.
then maybe it takes a little bit longer, but in 10 years, this doesn't matter. This was an interim. This would be like having a
Yeah,
CCS and
I
an
kind of
ACS
see,
plug.
yeah,
It's
I kind of see this as an interim move, and I, you know, I see that with other automakers. You know, they're doing this as interim. Like to your point, we got to make money for now until, you know, we go off to our rainbows and unicorns future. But
Yeah, let me grab my golden parachute as a CEO, and I'll let the next guy worry about that. That's
yeah,
what Rawlinson's doing right now, or he got kicked out of the plane.
well, we'll see.
Okay, Kia unveils its PV5 EV van,
Yeah.
and I looked at these pictures and was like, "This is Photoshop," and I don't like the look of this van. And then I scrolled down. There'll be a link in the show notes. This was an
Hmm.
electric story, or maybe it was a different story. I don't know. And they had an actual one. It looked like on the streets, and it looked good.
Hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I guess they're testing it in the US. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be on sale in the US, but um, you know,
The only
we'll
thing that
watch.
disappoints me is the design for Kia is kind of
Not as
boring.
edgy as you're used to.
Yeah. Kia kind of, the Hyundai group as a whole
Hmm.
was horrible for design. And then in the 2010s ish, they really started taking off.
Kind of got it together, yeah.
And they came up with some of the best designs. They had like a 10-year period where
Hmm.
everything, maybe 12 years, where everything was just incredible looking.
Hmm.
And now I don't know what's happened.
Yeah.
But not everything's a home run. Before, there was that sweet spot that started like
Hmm.
2011, 2012, somewhere around there. And
Hmm.
they just, everything was a home run. And I don't know if somebody left or somebody got lazy or somebody was told that you need to change for change's sake.
Hmm.
But now there's kind of weirdness
Yeah.
with these designs. And this
I
is
don't know.
one of them.
It doesn't have the cutesy and, you know, obviously not the nostalgia factor of like the ID Buzz. You know, it looks very functional and modern, but maybe a little cold. I don't know. I
Do
don't
we
hate
know
it. I don't
anything
love it.
about it? Okay, it's 177.2 inches long, 74.8 inches wide, 74.8 inches tall.
Hmm.
So it's as wide as it is tall. That's interesting. Or maybe that's normal for all I know. Which makes it a little bit shorter than the ID Buzz long wheelbase, like 20
Yeah.
inches
But
shorter.
about the same size as
It's
the short wheelbase. Yeah.
4 inches wide or 4 inches narrower than the Buzz, and 2 inches shorter than the Buzz, inch and a half shorter. So it's a little bit smaller. I don't know. Sure.
Anyway, cool.
Why not?
Yeah.
And electric, presumably, and that's why you put it in the rundown for us to talk about.
Yes. So finally, your I hope you know your hydrogen hopes and dreams.
When we started this blog and podcast, I don't know if I was all in on hydrogen, but I thought that there was definitely a potential for a future,
Hmm.
at least in some
like heavy
some
trucks
way,
or whatever.
some,
Yeah.
yeah, like the big Class 8 trucks, airplanes, big boats. There was
Hmm.
some future. And now, I don't, it seems like failure after failure. Here's Nikola now in its second failure, I guess, because its first was when
Milton got caught
Trevor Milton, yeah, got
pushing a
caught,
truck down a hill.
yeah, because they couldn't get the hydrogen to work, I guess. And then there's this. Now they file for a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is not the worst bankruptcy you can have,
No.
but there's better bankruptcies, which is no bankruptcy. But you know what I saw on the road the other day?
What?
I saw a Nikola truck.
Really?
Yeah, in the wild.
Why? I
Towing a
wonder
trailer.
who's going to service it now.
I have no idea. I just about crashed when I saw it because I'm like,
Like,
no,
what?
no way. And I'm like whipping my head around. I'm like, son of a gun. That
Yeah.
was an actual bona fide Nikola with, I can't remember what it was towing, but it was like an actual consumer. It wasn't like a test
Hmm.
mule.
Hmm.
I mean, if it was a test mule, it was towing the side. It was like an actual company. I can't remember what it was, but it was like I
Hmm.
recognized it.
Hmm.
And I thought, yeah, wow,
Hmm.
there's a sucker born every minute. Somebody bought one of those things.
Probably on very favorable lease terms, if I had to guess.
Well, hopefully where they can return it.
I hope so. So yeah, who knows? It says they're looking to wind down operations and sell assets. We'll continue to support trucks in the field and some of the
That truck.
hydrogen fueling
They're still
operations.
continuing to support that truck in the
Yeah.
field.
So anyway, I don't know who's going to pick up what's left. I don't know if it'll be a Chinese company or
The
now they
crumbling
did.
rubble. Who's going to pick that up and run with it? I don't think they got any of the infrastructure built of significance. They were supposed to have a
Uh,
whole
Hydrogen highway, which
hydrogen.
has been
Yeah, that was
talked
supposed
about for
to.
like 30 years.
Like if they would have got that built, then maybe somebody could step in and do something with it. But I think the only place that's really got any kind of quote unquote hydrogen highway is in
Mhm.
like Long Beach in Southern
Was
California.
California, and even that's kind of
But
shut down for the most part.
they still run hydrogen trucks because Toyota's part of that. They still run it
Yeah.
from Long Beach to some train depot or something. That there
Mhm.
is that bit of hydrogen that's still being used. But outside of that,
Yeah.
there's the, it,
So anyway,
they
like
didn't
the saying
succeed.
goes, hydrogen is the future and always will be. So
Yes, buy a t-shirt at thewalkout.com /store if you want a t-shirt that
anyway,
says that.
so I guess we'll wrap this up. So we got a teaser that Rivian was going to come out with this new model, and some were speculating, oh, it's going to be their version of the Raptor, the R1, the fabled R1X. It was just a new trim level, so woo.
And
Called
the
the
price is
California Dune Edition. So
$100,000 for a pickup truck.
106 for the R1S.
Yeah,
Um,
I am so down on those prices. Like I remember back in the I don't know, what was it, 2017,
mhm,
2016, that it was like, oh, you want an EV that is actually useful? Well, it's going to cost you $100,000. And we finally
yeah.
got past that. And
Hmm.
then it was because people were like, ah, that's stupid. They're just really expensive toys. You can't drive
Hmm.
anywhere.
Hmm.
And now we're down to $30,000 and $40,000 usable
Hmm.
EVs with good ranges, solid vehicles. Your Model 3 was
Hmm.
a prime example of that. But
Yeah.
now if you want an electric truck, which I've just said I don't want, but if you want one, $100,000. Where
Yeah. They're still luxury toys.
they're the same toy that EVs were back in 2016, usable EVs were in 2016,
Yeah.
massively overpriced. They can't do everything that they should do.
They
I,
can't go very far.
yeah, they can't do anything. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll
Well,
get
I mean, I
there.
can see
We'll
why
get there.
Rivian is very intent on getting the R2 launched. Not the one I'm most excited for. I'm most excited for the R3 if it ever
You
gets on the
and
road.
Mate Ramatz will be first in
Yeah.
line. All
So
right.
anyway, yeah, so
Everything we talked
that'll
about in the
yeah.
show notes. There'll be links in the show notes. Show notes can be found in the podcast and on the website. You'll find us on social media. Share any of these things. Share the podcast. We have a YouTube page. I didn't even say that at the beginning. We have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/@thewalkcar. Share that out. And people can subscribe to it that way. Like, smash the like button, ring the bell icon, whatever it is that you're supposed to do there. I mentioned earlier the walkcar.com/store. I mentioned that a couple times. Go there, purchase something, and that helps support us. email us at hello@thewalker.com if you've got any cool like t-shirt ideas, whatever. But otherwise, you can just leave comments on the YouTube channel. That's probably the best place to do it. And then, you know what,
I say,
Nicola?
I was going to say Mercedes. If they're sponsoring MMA, they can sponsor the walk car.
Yes. Yes.
But
They can, thewalkcar.com/advertise Mercedes. We'll do that. We'll do an MMA special limited edition ad for them if they want. I'm going to end there.
yeah,
Ta-da!
who knows what next week will bring?
More, well, I was going to say it's not like Nicola can go more bankrupt, but they can. And maybe they will next week. Stay tuned.
All right.